Hello and welcome to Hope for Dystonia. My name is Federico and you can call me Fede. I assume that if you're watching this, you don't know me yet. So here's a quick summary. I was incapacitated almost completely by dystonia for many years. At its worst, it prevented me from chewing most foods, speaking for more than a few minutes at a time, and walking even around the block to take my dog out. And I was able to rewire my brain. I was able to completely teach my body how to work differently. I taught my nervous system a new way of functioning. And this gave me my life back. I developed a method that just wasn't available out there, that is holistic, that takes multiple aspects of our well being into account. From trauma to detoxification to a number of techniques for neuroplasticity. I developed a system that I now share with clients to help them on their journeys to recover. And today, what I would like to share with you is something very special, namely my story of how dystonia came about for me, how I figured out what to do, and what the main pillars of my recovery were. And if you too are suffering from a neurological disorder, I invite you to click on the link in the description below. You will have access to a free video on hopefordystonia.com that goes into greater detail into the 8 steps of the roadmap of recovery as I share it with my clients at Hope for Dystonia. So it's really invaluable information, and I hope that you'll check it out because it really can change lives. Now, if you're not familiar with dystonia, it is a neurological disorder that causes involuntary movements, spasms that can be very painful, unnatural postures, and so much more. It can be very debilitating, and it certainly was for me because I was unable, to do pretty much anything for months at a time. I just lay there in bed. And it really changed the course of my life. Now, when it comes to Western medicine, there aren't really many options that are offered. So you are told that your only option really is to get injections of a neurotoxin that freezes the muscles that are spasming. But it really masks symptoms if you're lucky. It doesn't resolve anything. What I was able to do was to, again, teach my brain a completely different way of being in the body. And I got my life back by doing this. Now, I will tell you, the main pillars in my recovery story in just a second. But first, I do have a couple of important disclaimers. The first is that we're going to be talking about health, but we're not talking about medicine. So nothing of what I'm about to say is medical advice. So please don't take it as such. Make your medical decisions with your medical providers. The second is that we are going to be talking about mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms, that are being legalized in some places, not yet in others, decriminalized in yet other jurisdictions. So don't do anything that is not allowed where you live, and don't do anything without medical clearance. And most of all, mushrooms are not like taking, any over-the-counter medication. They require a lot of preparation and a lot of integration afterwards. You want to teach your brain to do the right thing, to create a new functional pattern that will increase your health, that will make your life better. So it can't just be done at random. Okay, so don't be silly, be wise. Okay, so how did this all come about for me? I will tell you a bit of an extended version of the story, and then I'll go into some of the solutions. And again, if you want the full detailed explanation of how I rewired my brain and how I work with clients, click on the link in the description below. It's really important and invaluable information. So I will transport you back to a day in 2011 when I heard my alarm clock ring on my cell phone. And like every other morning, I tried to roll over to grab my phone and turn off the alarm. Except that on that beautiful morning, I physically couldn't turn around. I was so stiff and so much in pain that I couldn't produce that movement. And so I ended up, little by little, trying to find my way to the cell phone for what felt like an eternity. And with a little pinky finger, I managed to bring the phone closer to me, and I got out of that situation. But that was really when the symptoms in my body exploded. And it took me a while to understand what was going on, because you would think that at that point I might have begun getting some answers from doctors. And yet, despite the countless specialists that I saw and, despite seeking help from myriads of people, I was only getting mistreated, misdiagnosed, even laughed at. And I'll tell you another story, because I know that if you too deal with a rare disorder or disease, you might have encountered something similar. So one day I was, really desperate for answers, and I decided to reach out to this fancy pain specialist with a beautiful office on Park Avenue in New York City. And so I paid my $500 for the consult in addition to what was being covered by my insurance. And I told this doctor about my symptoms. And I said, listen, the whole right side of my body is caught in a really painful spasm. And the left side is kind of just forgotten. And every little effort that I make, the right side of my body feels like it's working a lot more, and it becomes flushed with blood and sweaty and red. And fun fact, in the summer, the mosquitoes only bite me on my right side because the left side, just doesn't have nearly as much blood flowing through it. And this doctor thought that this was the funniest thing that he had ever heard. And he laughed, and he proceeded to grab my hand while he was laughing and walked me out of the office. So he literally laughed me out of the office. And I was very confused. I thought that he was taking me to another room to run some tests or something. But no, that was the end of the consult. And so I am telling you this story because if you are in this sort of situation where you're looking for answers, you're trying to get better, and it looks like you're not looking in the right places, the answers exist. You can get better. No matter how far gone you think you are, your body wants to get better. And so I hope that this video will leave you feeling empowered, knowing that this is the case, that you can get better. And so the misfortunes continued for a while. I was given antibiotics that had nothing to do with what I was going through. And that ruined my digestive tract. And then I was being convinced that I had to go through this double jaw surgery, that I had to get my face broken up and filled with titanium and screws and all kinds of stuff to give me a better occlusion, so a better way for my teeth to bite down. And I knew that, my occlusion needed help. But as I started the preparations for double jaw surgery through orthodontics and certain dental interventions, my nervous system symptoms actually kept getting worse and worse and worse. And after a while, I was so dizzy that I could barely get up from bed. And, the surgeon, the dentist, and so on, they were saying that, what they were doing had nothing to do with my nervous system issues, and that I was basically just being capricious. And so I understood that not only was I looking in the wrong places, I was doing harm to my body. And I understood that I had to find completely different answers to what was going on for me. And that was the beginning of a journey of recovery. I spent some more time at that point in bed, really angry, really frustrated, really depressed, very anxious about the future, resisting what was happening to me, saying, no, this can't be. I will be stronger than this. I will overcome. And I will, power my way through this difficulty. And obviously, this approach wasn't working. I was just creating more tension, and I wasn't getting anywhere. And so I ended up saying, you know what? I give up. I don't give up on getting better, but I give up on this resistance. I'm going to allow what is happening, and I'm going to listen. I'm going to really try to understand what my body's trying to tell me. I tried to do what the poet Rumi says we should do with our emotions. Treat them like honored guests, because each one of them is like a messenger from beyond. And by doing that, I began to understand what was happening. And what was happening was that when I was little, 8, 9, up to 11 years old, certain dentists had applied a certain number of orthodontic interventions to me that were based on completely wrong principles, and there were some accidents. And so they ended up opening up my bite on the left side. So my teeth on that side didn't touch anymore. And for my entire life, they didn't. And so I was able to understand that this was an input that my brain was adapting to. So we know that the brain, the nervous system at large, are plastic entities. They continue, even in adulthood, to adapt to the environment and the inputs that they receive from the environment. And so in my case, my brain said, okay, I can't touch on the left, so I can't chew there, I can't speak there, I can't bite on that left side when I need to, make an effort and find some greater muscle tone in the body. I can't do all of those things on the right. So I'm gonna strengthen and develop the pathways that help me control the right side, and I'm gonna shed and forget the pathways that I'm not using that help me control the left side. And so over the course of many years, my brain started forgetting first, the pathways that relate to the mouth and the face on the left side, and then the neck, and then the shoulder, and then you get it, all the way down to the toes. And over time, that right side that was overused became so much overused that it was caught in a perpetual spasm. And so this is a process of maladaptive neuroplasticity. So the brain learns and adapts to a dysfunctional input. And I understood that if I wanted to get better, I had to teach my brain how to come back to this left side and let go of this excessively used right side. And I had a bit of a false start in the beginning. I went to Korea, spending lots of time and money and effort on certain treatments that helped me adjust my temporomandibular joint alignment. So how my jaw was fitting in these crucial joints that we have here between the jaw and the cranium. And despite initial relief, those steps forward didn't really last. And it makes sense because, as I said, if we have learned a dysfunctional pattern in the body, we need to actively teach the brain something new. It can't be passively done to us. So, my jaw was being aligned in some respects better, in some respects worse, by this professional in Korea. But my brain wasn't really learning. It was being done to me and not by me, which is something that I always emphasize with clients. We have to be the active agents in our recovery, right? So, okay, that was a false start, but it gave me an understanding that not all hope was lost, that somehow there was a way to get better. And so here begins the true journey of recovery. And I'm about to tell you what the 4 pillars of my recovery were. And these are kind of the essentials, but it's much more sophisticated than this. And again, if you want more detail and you're curious, I invite you again to click on that link in the description below. So here it goes. The first thing that really helped me make a ton of progress was being shown the importance of the cranial nerves. And that is the first pillar. So the cranial nerves are crucial pathways that live in the head and neck, and that help us understand the world, regulate our bodies, and so much more. And when we have cervical dystonia, oromandibular dystonia, generalized dystonia, and other kinds of these neurological disorders, the cranial nerves are the first ones that get imbalanced. And so I was taught how to kind of understand the cranial nerves and was able to develop certain techniques that are specific to dystonia to map out what the patterns of underuse and overuse are in the cranial nerves. Okay, so which ones of the 12 pairs of cranial nerves are hypotonic, so underused, and which ones are hypertonic or overused. And so understanding that in my case, everything on the left side was underused. It was hypotonic because I never used it, and hypertonic on the right, okay? And so with a series of gentle techniques, I was able to say, okay, can I wake up, say, the 7th cranial nerve in my tongue by really stimulating it with all kinds of tastes and different kinds of foods that really get lots of electricity flowing there, and teaching my brain that it can use this 7th cranial nerve in the tongue on the left and let go a little bit more on the right. And doing this for all 12 pairs of cranial nerves. And that gave me, a chance to actively even out the muscle tone in my head and neck and in my entire body. It gave me a chance to actively understand the map of the body and the world that my brain was seeing, and actively change it, even it out. And so that was a massive kind of step forward. And however, despite the progress that I was making in creating this greater balance, again, I saw that those changes didn't last. I had to continuously kind of stimulate those sleepy pathways to let go of the overused ones. And I understood that there was more to this. And here's where the second pillar comes in. So the second pillar of my recovery was neuroplasticity. And there were a number of techniques that I used to induce neuroplasticity, so to help my brain learn a new functional pattern that included the use of those forgotten hypotonic pathways on the left. But what really was transformational for me was a connection that I made because of an intuition. I had learned that psychedelic substances, and mushrooms in particular, can promote neuroplasticity. And I knew at that point that dystonia was a matter of maladaptive neuroplasticity. And I said, okay, unlike many others, I know what caused my process of maladaptive neuroplasticity. And I have the tools to teach my brain how to use those forgotten pathways again. So if I combine the neuroplasticity afforded by the mushrooms with the functional inputs that I know how to provide, I should be able to produce positive neuroplasticity, adaptive neuroplasticity. And boy, was I right. So I started working with microdosing and then with macrodosing, and I had these incredible experiences where all of a sudden I could experience the world through the left side. I could feel my left side so much more, and I could see and smell and hear with the left side so much better. And I could even out the muscle tone between left and right and let go of spasms. And wow, it was just an incredible discovery. And I remember one day during one of these experiences, seeing my dog come into the room wanting to cuddle. And I remember just touching his fur with my left hand and smelling his sweet doggy smell with my left nostril, and just having a completely different experience of him and of being me, really, because of the mushrooms. And again, it's not just the mushrooms, it's the mushrooms combined with those techniques to help stimulate and upregulate the hypotonic pathways, right? Otherwise, it's not really going to do much. So that was a massive step forward. I understood that I could not only stimulate the forgotten pathways, I could also integrate them into functional patterns and help my brain learn those functional patterns. So if before I would only smell things with the right nostril, say, I could now begin learning the process of smelling with both nostrils. Okay, and doing that for a myriad other things, from speaking to, you name it, every other daily activity that was difficult for me. Reading, focusing my eyes, and so on. And so I continued with this journey of teaching my brain, how not to spasm with the eyes, for example, how to really use both eyes equally, and then trying to read for a little bit, sitting at a desk and, having both of my hands on the keyboard and learning not to spasm in the neck as I did that. And the mushrooms really were incredible allies when they were combined with the right inputs, right? So I sit at a desk. Can I have functional reminders as I do this that help me use that left side? Okay, so there will be more content and more videos and more information coming on all of this, but again, a great place to start is the video in the description. And okay, so I was making lots of great progress with the mushrooms, but there was still a lot that felt blocked. Like I couldn't really unlearn certain patterns. I couldn't really have access to certain spasms, and something just wasn't going as far as it needed to. And here's where the third pillar comes in. The third pillar in my recovery was trauma healing. So we now know that the traumatic fight or flight energy, the one that has us react to danger, can get stuck in the body when we don't have a chance to release it. And it makes us sick. And we also know that adverse childhood experiences can contribute to these mystery illnesses later in adulthood. And so I understood that a big part of why my nervous system was constantly dysregulated had to do with my own traumas, that I was carrying lots and lots of them, and that I needed to resolve those if I was to get better. And so I learned to work with the body somatically to release that stuck traumatic energy. And I learned to work with mindfulness and self-compassion, which are a big part of my work. I am, among other things, a certified mindfulness teacher. Working with those to provide love, unconditional love, to the parts of me that were wounded. And to my amazement, the more I could free that traumatic energy, the less tension there was in my body. And the more I could mend and heal the wounds in my psyche and bring back the parts of me that I had to shut out, the more I could bring back the forgotten parts of my body. And this is really my experience with clients 100%, that the parts of us that we exile in our inner world very much correspond to parts of us in the body that we need to reintegrate in the way that we inhabit our bodies. And so that was another kind of massive step forward, working with trauma. And, it's not obvious. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of skill to know how to provide compassion to the parts that need it. And it is a big part of what I do. So that was, again, transformative, but it wasn't getting me quite where I needed to go. And so I was noticing that despite all the progress, my left side wasn't communicating as well as it could have. It just wasn't carrying the electricity the same way that the right side could. And it was a feeling of something kind of slowing things down, something kind of squeezing my nerves, if you will. And I discovered that a number of neurological disorders are linked to toxicity. So from heavy metals that we are exposed to in the environment all the time, from certain medications and so on, and to certain viral infections like Epstein-Barr, shingles, and so on. I understood that both of those, the toxicity and the viruses, could impact the nervous system. And so I learned how to detoxify my body and support the immune system very gently and very naturally with fruits and vegetables and certain seaweeds and so on. And to my amazement, the more I went into this series of practices, the more of a sense of relief I could feel. It was as if the smoothies were lifting something that was sitting on my nerves. They were physically lifting something off. And when that happened, there was a feeling of an ability to breathe. Like, again, something was choking my nervous system, and it wasn't choking my nerves anymore once I went deeper and deeper with those smoothies. All right. So that feeling of freedom corresponded to a remarkable decrease in the spasms in the body, and a remarkably improved ability to use both sides of my body. And so this is also a big part of what I do with clients, is finding the ways to work gently with where each one of us is, in supporting the body with, a flood of fruits and vegetables and so on, in really kind of getting rid of what doesn't serve, and making sure that the body can repair what needs to be repaired, and so on and so forth. And so, okay, so these 4 things were really the essentials. Now, after going through this and all of the good stuff that you'll find on hopefordystonia.com, I had my life back. I was able to do all kinds of things that were unthinkable just a few years prior. I was able to, speak for long periods of time, like what I'm doing right now. And believe me, I've filmed and refilmed this video several times because I wanted it to be really good. I was able to hike for entire days in the beautiful mountains around here, and I was able to, chew anything that I wanted, and kayak in the summer for 12 kilometers each time. And, if you've ever had cervical dystonia, you know that this movement can be really difficult. So I was able to do all of those things. And yet it's important for me to tell you that my journey is not yet finished. It's not going to be finished until I close this gap that I have on the left side. And I'm getting really close to being able to do that, but I'm not quite there yet. And so it's important for me to let you know that, I'm in the journey, continuing with my progress. And I walk the journey with my clients, rather than, speaking from the ivory tower of perpetual health. So again, I hope that this information and my story gave you hope that things can get better. And what you'll find on hopefordystonia.com is free access to this video, again, by clicking in the link in the description below. And the one thing that I ask in return is that you leave your email address so that we can stay in touch. I promise that I will not spam you, okay? I will send you from time to time articles to inform you about the different aspects of what I just described, new videos that come out, coaching opportunities in groups and individually, and courses. And there's lots of great stuff coming up on hopefordystonia.com. And so this is a way to kind of stay in touch. And again, I really believe that this information is life-changing. And it wasn't anywhere to be found when I needed it. So I wish it had been out there when I began to really have a hard time functioning. So thank you for listening. I'm really grateful for your attention. I invite you to subscribe to the channel, like the video. It'll encourage me to make more, and click on that notification bell if you want to be told when new videos are coming out. And in the meantime, I send lots of wishes of good health and wholeness and love coming your way. Thank you.